We see violence in the world, literally, every day. We condemn it, right? We're afraid of it, we fight it, but what if all that violence? What if it's just the final, bloody scene of a play that started long, long before in a place we never even thought to look? All right, let's dive into this idea of invisible chains.
This right here, this is the key to everything we're talking about today. It's this idea that the violence we can see, the stuff that makes the news, isn't the beginning of the story, not even close. It's the end. The real story, the origin, starts somewhere much deeper, somewhere unseen.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? If the violence we see is just the tip of the iceberg, then what in the world is the massive, invisible chunk of ice hiding underneath the surface? Well, we're about to peel back 3 different layers to get to the answer.
Okay, let's start at the top, the part of the iceberg we can all see. This is level 1, the final symptom. This is the kind of exploitation we all recognize, the stuff that makes headlines. This is the visible part of the disease.
You know, murder, terrorism, assault. These are the acts that just horrify us. We call them evil, and for very good reason. I mean, they're a direct violation of a person's body, their physical self. This is our shared starting point. This is the common ground we all stand on. From here, we're going to dig deeper.
And this leads us to a really core idea. Physical violence is never the origin. It's the final outbreak. Think of it like this. It's the fever, but it's not the illness itself. It's the ugly rash you see on the skin, but it's not the infection that's coursing through the body.
So if physical violence is just the symptom, we have to go looking for the actual illness, right? Let's go one level deeper. Now this is where things get really subtle and honestly a lot more dangerous, precisely because you can't see it. We're not talking about physical force anymore. Mental exploitation. It's like a silent takeover of your mind. It's the quiet reshaping of the very things that make you, you. What you want, what you value, what you're afraid of, and ultimately, the choices you think you're making all on your own.
So how does this happen? Well, it happens through tools we see every single day. Political narratives that frame our entire worldview. That sort of consumerist hypnosis that makes us feel like we always need more. Media-driven emotions that tell us exactly how to feel about something before we've even had a chance to think for ourselves. It's so quiet, we usually don't even notice it's happening.
And this just nails the central paradox, doesn't it? The most effective prison is the one you don't even know you're in. When your thoughts and desires are being shaped by all these outside forces, you can walk around thinking you're totally free, all while being guided by invisible strings. But here's the kicker, the really deep irony. The very people and systems that are masters of this mental game, they're often the ones we put up on pedestals. We call them successful, powerful, influential. We admire them, we vote for them, we buy their stuff. It's wild.
But believe it or not, there is one level that's even deeper. You can think of it as the source code, the origin point, where all the other exploitation comes from. And this is the most powerful level of all, because it's often considered, well, holy, sacred, completely untouchable.
Spiritual exploitation is all about controlling the fundamental stories, the core beliefs that a person or a whole society holds as absolute, unquestionable truth. It works in that realm of ideas that are just placed beyond debate, ideas you inherit, not choose, and are told you must defend as sacred.
And yeah, this can look like rigid religious control, but it's actually so much bigger than that. Think about ideological imprisonment, where political or socialism basically becomes your entire identity. It makes it impossible to question any of it without feeling like you're betraying yourself. Or unquestioned dogma, which isn't just about faith, but any belief system, political, economic, whatever, that tells you what to think instead of teaching you how to think.
And this might be the most devastating irony of all. The people who are at the very root of this deep control, they aren't seen as exploiters. No, they're revered. They're seen as saints, as gurus, as the protectors of truth. The source of the poison is actually seen as the cure.
Okay, so we have our 3 levels, the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. Now let's connect the dots and see how this chain of sickness actually works, how it grows from that invisible root all the way up to the very visible symptom. It's a clear chain reaction, really. It always starts at the spiritual level, with some kind of distorted or unquestioned belief. That belief then infects the mental level, shaping a person's thoughts, their identity, and finally, that conditioned mind produces a physical action. See? Violence on the street actually begins as violence in a belief system.
And if we go back to that body analogy, it makes perfect sense. Spiritual exploitation is like a mutation in your DNA, the absolute core code. This flawed code then leads to an infection in an organ. That's the mental exploitation. And that sickness inside eventually shows up as a visible symptom on the skin, and that's the physical exploitation.
So why on earth don't we see this chain? It's because our reactions are totally inverted. We condemn the physical level because, duh, it's visible and it's horrible. We mostly ignore or just normalize the mental level, calling it marketing or politics. But we actively worship the spiritual level, calling it sacred or truth. We've got it completely upside down.
And this sentence just sums it all up so powerfully. We are constantly fighting the rash on the skin while praying to the flawed DNA that caused it in the first place. We treat the symptom as the cause, and the cause as the savior. So what's the point of all this? Is it just to be depressed? No, not at all. The point of understanding this is to gain a new kind of power. This whole framework, it's a lens. It's a new way of seeing the world that can lead to a really profound kind of freedom.
And that's the real benefit here. Once you start using this lens, when you see some terrible act of violence, you don't just react to the horror of it anymore. You start asking different questions. You start asking, what mental conditioning led to this? And what unquestioned beliefs were fueling that conditioning? You shift from just being a reactor to being an analyst.
And this points to the idea that true liberation, it isn't just about being safe from physical harm. That's just the last step. Real, true freedom is freedom from those invisible chains, freedom from the subconscious scripts and cultural programming and inherited beliefs that shape who we are without us even realizing it.
So here's the bottom line. You can be physically free. You're not in a jail cell, but you can still be a prisoner of an ideology, a prisoner of a manipulated desire, a prisoner of a belief you never actually chose for yourself. Without freedom of the mind, physical freedom is pretty much an illusion.
And that's where we'll leave it. Because this framework, it isn't just an analysis, it's an invitation. Now that you have a lens to see the invisible chains that are at work in society, and maybe even inside yourself, the final question becomes a very personal one. How will you begin to think freely?